Hello ladies and gentlemen! If you've been watching my videos this past year, you probably remember the walking house I once created. A month later I made a follow-up video where I made a flying Minecraft house. The lovely Dan TDM ended up making a video about it and said this in the end.
What next? Submarine house. Get on it, McMakistein. Get on it!
Initially I planned for the flying house to be the last house transformation, but I mean, if I get challenged like that, I obviously have to go for it. There was one tiny problem though. The third-person controller I used in the walking and flying house relies on a pig riding an armor stand. Unfortunately, mobs automatically dismount if they don't stay in the air, so the system completely broke underwater. For that reason I decided to make a swimming house instead of a submarine, since it's kind of the same theme. To smoothly move a house around in a Minecraft world, it needs to be converted into an entity first. By putting a block model on the head of an armor stand, we can just teleport and rotate it wherever we want. In the first episode I used a single block model to represent the house. In the second one I used 8 block models, which allowed me to increase the total size. Since that is much more complex to work with though, I wanted to stick to a small one again. I started off by building a small house that fit into a 7x7x7 area, because that is the maximum block model size. I then made an exact replica in Cubic Studio and adjusted the display settings to overlap exactly with the original build in Minecraft. Simply replacing the physical blocks with the model would have been super easy, but I wanted there to be some sort of transformation to make it visually appealing. The current design just doesn't look like it would actually swim. My idea was basically to move the roof underneath the boat and make it represent the bottom. How on earth is that possible though? Well, if we think about it, the two roof halves basically just need to rotate 90 and minus 90 degrees, and the basic shape is exactly where we want it to be. So instead of having a single model, I separated the roof from the house and spawned 2 armor stands, each with one of the roof halves on their head. After a first test I quickly realized that the position was not correct yet and added some teleportation commands to move everything into place. I was pretty happy with that result already, but I still wanted to get rid of these gaps in the front and back. The scoreboard timer responsible for the animation summons another armor stand that slowly makes another brick component move upwards. After the animation finished, all the individual parts are killed and the global center armor stand gets updated to contain all the new changes. That way I now have a single entity that I can freely teleport around. The next step was making it swim, which was luckily really easy to do. There are a couple of commands that simply test for air and water, and depending on the result, teleport the armor stand up or down. We can try to manually update the Y coordinate for example, and as you can see it always automatically moves back to the surface. As a neat little detail, I even implemented a system that makes the boat sway to make it appear less static. There are 2 scoreboard objectives that basically oscillate with different frequencies, and using execute store, I then simply apply that value to the head pose of the armor stand. This way I could easily adjust the amount of swaying I wanted. Just for fun, we can make it really extreme simply by changing 2 values in the datapack. Floating around in the water is great, but moving around would be amazing too, of course. I created 2 new scoreboard objectives, one for the forward velocity and one for the rotation. If the velocity score is 0, nothing happens. But above 1, a function is executed that gives the armor stand a motion forwards. The speed depends on the score, so the higher it is, the faster the boat will swim. Manually updating these scoreboard values is not really a user-friendly way of controlling the boat, so next off I needed to make a control system. The walking house basically used a tell raw system, where you had to click into the chat. That kinda sucked because you couldn't use your mouse and the controls at the same time. So for the flying house I switched to items in your hotbar that players could right click. Doing the same exact thing again kinda felt boring, and I always wanted to try to innovate and come up with new systems. My goal was having the rotation and speed controls only take up 2 inventory slots. How is that possible though? I mean, there are not that many input methods in Minecraft. We have right-click detection, we can test in which direction the player is looking in, which is already used for the third-person controller though. And then there is shift and jump, which is also blocked because the player is sitting on an invisible pig and he would just get off, which is not what we want, of course. But then I had a pretty cool idea and wanted to use the mouse wheel as an input. I'll make a separate video about the system, but it works really well now. As long as you hold down right click, you can scroll up and down to change the scoreboard values. There's even a little display in the action bar to give some information about the current speed and rotation. If you let go, it disappears and the normal control panel shows up again. Swimming around with this system is so much more fun, and you could even set up some sort of race if you want. Apart from the normal movement, there are of course some other cool features again. Right-clicking the fourth item in your inventory places a bomb at your current location. I kinda tried to make them look like the ones from Finding Nemo, and I'm really happy with the result. No matter how deep the ocean underneath you is, the bomb will always be connected to the ground with a chain. If an entity now gets too close and touches it, or the bomb itself of course, it blows up, insta-killing all the mobs in a 20 block radius. We can just try to spawn a bunch of fish, wait for them to mess up, and you can see how devastating the damage is. It even works for multiple bombs at a time. So if you want to secure your underwater base, you can place a bunch of these down and nobody will make it close to you alive. The next ability is a simple missile. Right click the icon and the house will shoot into the direction it is facing. As soon as it collides with a block other than water, there will be a massive explosion causing a lot of blocks to disappear. The coolest thing is that the destroyed blocks are automatically filled with water again. So if you have places to be but reach the end of the ocean, just brute force your way through the terrain and you can keep swimming. There's a cooldown of about 1 second, so a pretty powerful weapon. The last active ability is a water vortex. When you right click, the house spawns one at its location. It doesn't just look neat, but also works. All the mobs in a certain radius will be sucked in. This can either be used to trap hostile mobs or as a fish or squid farm. Just be patient for a couple of minutes and then pay them a visit with your looting sword. The vortex stays active for exactly 5 minutes before it automatically disappears. One thing to keep in mind is that if you want to use more than one at a time, you need to place them at least 15 blocks apart from each other. But don't worry, nothing breaks if you try to spawn them too close together. You get a warning in chat and the vortex just doesn't spawn. I also decided to include the camera toggle tool in this house to give players more freedom. If you don't want to always look at the center, just right click the item in your 7th inventory slot and you can toggle the behavior basically. If you had enough fun with the new swimming house, right click the last item which plays the intro animation in reverse and puts you back into the house. Another way of exiting is by pressing shift, which also transforms the house back into its block form. I tried to make the entire data pack as foolproof as possible, so the system even works when you enter and immediately exit again. The house will just transform back as soon as the intro animation finished playing. Last but not least, I added a spawning mechanism so that even survival players can use the data pack in their worlds. Fill a chest with the following items and then drop another star on top. The contents will be sacrificed, but a beautiful house will appear. To remove it again, throw a piece of TNT inside and you'll get the house back in form of a spawn egg. This is great for relocating your house and you can move it wherever you want. After that, just right click the particles to enter the house and everything works like I just showed you. The absolute coolest thing is that I made the data pack compatible with the walking and flying house, so you can have all 3 of them in one world and use them at the same time. Simply use all the data packs and make sure you use the swimming house resource pack, since it contains the models and textures for all the previous ones too. If you want to try it out for yourself, the download link is in the description, so feel free to check it out. With about 800 commands, this data pack was a lot of work, but honestly so worth it. I'm just super happy with the creation and just love experimenting with new concepts and bringing ideas in my head to life. Let me know what you guys think about this data pack in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed, a positive rating would absolutely make my day as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.